Guys, today we'll be learning about pivot tables. What are pivot tables? Let's find out together. I'll go to insert, and then right here you can see there's insert, so you can see pivot tables. What does it say? It says easily arrange and summarize complex data in pivot tables. FYI, you can double click a value to see the details, to see which detailed value make up the summarized total, right? Okay, so that's what pivot table does. It helps you summarize large data sets very quickly. Okay, so I'll bring in the data so we can practice with that. Of course, I'll leave a link in the description below for you to download the data set. Click this, bring in this guy, click on import. All right. Okay, so I'll just load. My data is not perfect, so I'll take a look at it. Okay, so I will do it. Click on the drop down, check blanks. Okay, I have an empty row at the bottom. Control minus. I'll be fast because these are things I've covered before, right? So I'll be very fast. This is 150. Okay, this is empty. This is 5. Well, yeah, I know the data, as I'm able to just jump to where there's an issue. I'll leave this empty, delete it. What else? I think we're all good. If I check, scroll down, all good. Check, scroll down, all good. Check, scroll down, all good. Blanks, so we have blanks here, sure. Just flag that. Yeah, just flag yellow. Weird color, I know. All right, next we're good. Blanks, okay, flag that as well. Okay, all good, all good, all good, all good. All right, nice. So this is what we have, and but we can know, or we can tell now, that this is these values are behaving as text, right? These values are behaving as text, and that's not what we want. How do we confirm? Let's do a sum, then highlight all these values. All right, we hit enter. You see the sum of those values is giving 150. That means this value is behaving as text, not as real value. The only one that is a real number is 150, and we know how to undo that now. Okay, so just add a new column. And the same goes for this guy. Let's drag. Okay, so basically this guy as well, and that is this 5, just this 5 that we added. Okay, all right. If you feel I'm too fast, we've covered quite a good number of series. To see them, you understand what's going on. And if, even though you've seen them, I feel a bit too fast, you can watch it over again or use the playback speed button to slow down to your pace. Yeah, that's the word, your pace. All right, so this will be the amount, the cleaned amount. So I'll just say value, select this, enter, all good. Of course, this place is empty, and converting null will give us a 0. Yeah, you'll be asking, but why is this giving a 0? Why is this giving a null? They're both empty, right? Now this was not initially empty, you remember, it was ABC. We deleted the value. Okay, so that's just it, nothing serious. So yeah, I'll change this to amounts. I need to remove the formulas. Right, remove the formulas, delete this column, take this back to the way it was. I think it's this. All right, amount, this will be empty, so we know we are dealing with this too. Just put 0 for there, just put 0 there for now. Let's move on. For this, blanks as well, blank. Okay, we need to do something. Value, select this, fill down this, see, remove. Okay, like I said, we've taken time to learn about cleaning, handling all these different errors and all. So that's a bit fast because our focus today is on pivot tables, and that's what I want us to draw. So next thing is remove this, go on, we'll take this out, put a 0 there, but it doesn't make sense to have a 0, but we can still put the 0 there. That means this has not been sold at all, since that's the quantity. Okay, so quantity, and we'll bring this back. All right, okay, all good now, all good, clean. Nice. So I want to reorder this, so I will bring this forward. Okay, so we have amounts and quantity side by side. Then we'll probably need a column called sales, which will be this multiplied by this, right? Nice. Okay, of course 0 quantity means no sales, 0 amount, 4 quantity. Yeah, like I said, our focus is not the cleaning part, right? Maybe when we're working with the data we want to use to create a dashboard, we focus on cleaning that properly, but in this video we're focusing on pivot tables, right? So I'll just ignore that 0, this is 0 as well, just ignore all of that. What can we do? Well, we can decide to use the average value of the product or the entire column, but in this case I can just use the average value of the product, widget D, and if I want to do that I'll have to do it outside this column, right? So I can bring that somewhere here and say average if. So average if the range is this, but the 0 will be a problem. Okay, the 0 in there will be a problem, right? So what can we do? Oh no, that's not the range. Average if criteria. Yeah, so I think I will rename my table. The table name is too long, so I can type that fast. Store data sets, that's too long. I'll just name it data set. We don't have 2 data sets in here, so just give it a data. All right, that's easy to reference. Then we'll do our average if, then we'll do the data set in square brackets, and that is product. Okay, so the criteria is widget D. Okay, widget D. So why am I using widget D? Why am I using widget D? If you take a look at this, widget D is the one with 0. Okay, so I want to fill or want to replace that missing value. So we're looking at, we're considering an average value of other widget D products. Okay, the best thing to do is to ask question. If this were real data, they'll probably have the price of that product somewhere. Okay, but this is the synthetic data as usual, as we know. All right, the next thing is the data set again. We want the amount, right? Okay, amount. Then close the bracket, close it. The value will be flawed because of these values, right? So I have to delete them. What happens if we don't delete them? I'll delete this as well. All right, so what happens when we don't delete them? They are included in the calculation. If it's completely empty, Excel ignores it, right? It ignores that row, moves on with the calculation. But when it's not, when we have a 0, let me show you what I mean. 2, 3, 0. If we take the average of these three numbers, average, you see we're getting a 1.677. But when we take the average of 2 and 3, we're getting 2.5. Why is that? The average of 2, 3, and 0 will be 2 plus 3 plus 0, everything divided by 3, right? That means we're dividing by 3. As much as 0 is insignificant, it's part of the division or part of the operation, so it's divided by 3. However, if we just have 3 plus 2, that will be divided by 2. So that makes sense now, right? Good. Okay, so just take this, since these are in whole numbers, we'll round that off, so that will be 333. All right. Then I want to do the same thing for this guy. I'll just drag it all the way down. Then I say widget A, right? Widget A is missing for that. Okay, this is what we have. From round this up, this is the 361. Okay, we'll take that out. Nice. So if quantity is 0, that still makes sense. That means no sales were made. But amount 0, not so cool. Okay. All right. What else do we want to do? Yeah, we're good with this. We can work with this. Let's work with this. Okay. The next thing I want to do is to start using our pivot table, and of course, I'm not gonna keep this colored. Whatever. Just clear that. All right. I like it nice and clean. Take out the. Okay. I'll just put it on no fill. Okay. Nice. Control Shift L, remove the. Okay, as usual, slightly gray. Now it's done. This was created. Let me make that a little bit darker. The headers, Control B. Okay. All right. This is what we have. We still have our data in the table. Nice. Our table name is called data sets. Good. Sales data seems more reasonable. Sales data. By the way, you're not allowed to use space. Okay, remember from the beginning, naming is good. You don't use space. Connect them with an underscore or use camel casing. Okay, nice. So we have this clean, simple looking data set, and of course we can do some feature engineering. We've cleaned it up, yeah, very fast to clean the data. We can do some feature engineering, probably extract the month of transaction, but from our drop down, let's see that quickly. We see that Excel was able to group that for us. So just in case Excel was not able to group it, when we get to the pivot table option, we'll see how to group it as well. And if that is still not working for you, then you can just do some feature engineering, create new columns for month and for year. That way you'll be able to group them yourself. Okay. All right, nice. Next thing, we want to go into pivot table. We want to insert this data into pivot tables. What are pivot tables? Pivot tables help us summarize large data sets. Let me put it to you this way. Say, for example, you have a business question, or your manager has asked you as data analyst, oh yeah, how much did we make in January so far? How would you do that? You have to write a lot of function. Oh, January sales. And now you start thinking of which function can get you that. Or probably create a column first with January, and then you now do a sum if to check all the sales made in January, all of that. That's going to take long, right? Because if you have multiple questions like that, how do you do it? And what if they wanted to be in form of a table, something that is easily summarized, right? So we have the regular table, which is this, and then we have the pivot table, which is the summarized version of this giant data set. Let's see how powerful and simple, efficient that is. I'll be showing you a couple of ways to use the pivot table, okay, or to insert your data into a pivot table. The first way, which is the regular conventional way, is you go to insert. Make sure you're clicking somewhere within your data. Okay, don't click outside, click anywhere at all. All right, we'll take out the headers as well. Okay, go on, just click anywhere within your table. You go to insert. Just a minute. So you go to insert, you go click on pivot tables, and by default, let's pay attention to this. You get this pop-up, which is nice. What are the things you should pay attention to? This says your table name, right? Nice. And by default, new worksheet is checked. Okay, if we want it on an existing worksheet, we'll look at that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll look at different ways of bringing in the data. So I'll take this out. For now, we want to keep it on a new worksheet, so we see it just for the sake of showing us. Okay, all right, so we have it now. Nice, you can see pivot table 1 on a new sheet. Okay, what if we have this blank sheet already that is doing nothing, and that is where we want to put it? Okay, so I'll delete this. Permanent, yeah, I know. Go back to insert, click on pivot table. I'll click on new worksheet. Now under this new worksheet, just the way we reference a cell, that's all we want to do. We want to reference the starting point of the pivot table. It's a table, a long table, right? But it needs a cell to denote the starting point. Okay, and how do we do it? We click on this source, or this is where we'll link it, this arrow, just right here. Yes, might be slightly different in icon depending on your version, but that's where you click this, and now all you have to do is go to the sheet you want to use, and let's say I want to start at this point, B2. I'll hit enter. The location is locked in. Now click OK, and boom, you can see in those sheets we want it to be. That's where we have it. Okay, that is where we have it. Nice. Now we have seen two first ways of bringing in pivot table. Eventually we will need more than one pivot table. Okay, so instead of going back and forth, going back to your data to insert again and then pivot table again, what other way can we bring in a pivot table? I'll click here, and I can click on insert directly without going to my data sheet. Then I'll click pivot table. Now it's blank, right? I don't have anything. All I have to do is type my table name, or my the name of my data. The entire data is named sales data. We're able to easily do that because it's in a table. Regardless if it's not in a table, we can highlight the whole range and give it a name, right? So we have sales data, existing worksheet. Yes, I want it to start here. Yes, this will be the starting point. So the way this is nicely laid out, that will also be laid out from G to H all the way down to 19, row 19, like that. So just click OK, and now I have two pivot tables. If I want another one, I just click somewhere else, go to insert, click on pivot table, type in my sheet name, and then boom, I'm in there. Okay, all right, let's work with this. Let's understand the fields that we have by the side. Okay, it would be nice to name the pivot table Okay, but before we do that, this is how we name it. We need to know what we want to use this pivot table for, right? So we might as well just understand this first, pull some fields in, then we'll decide what the name of this pivot table will be. Okay, so now whatever you're summarizing will be based on questions that has been asked about the data. Since one key step in analytics is defining the question, or defining the goal, defining the objectives, right? So that means before you start with the data, you should have some objectives laid out, what you want the data to answer. Okay, so those questions are what guides your analysis. If you don't have any question at all, you will take longer because you try things out and then do this and do this. But with a guide, of course, even though data presents many possibilities, but that will serve as a guide, so you focus on what is important. Okay, so that's what we want to do. Since we don't have specific objectives, we'll just be thinking of questions together and then we'll answer them using the data. Now, what if, like I said, okay, let's use the first question we asked. We want to see the sales in January. Sales in January. Okay, total sales in January. All right, so I will bring this here. That's the easy way. But if I bring it there, you'll be like, what's it doing? So let's explain these fields that we have here. These sections or areas, yeah, call them areas. Now, rows are what its name implies. Rows is what the name implies, right? What does that mean? If I drop, for example, names of customers in rows, you can see it appears in row. Just is as simple as that. They appear in row. Normal way to appear in an Excel sheet. And you probably can think of it already. If I drop it in column, it appears in column. But before I drop it, you see I'm still holding it. How am I able to drag? You left click and then you slide your hand anywhere you want it to go. If I drop it on this area, that means it's going to be deleted. It's going to disappear. It's the same as unchecking the box right here. Okay, now if I drop it in column, of course the names will appear in column, but because we have this guy blocking its way, there might be a spill error, and we know what that is already. Okay, so it's saying, oh, we couldn't complete this action for the pivot table 2 in the sheet. All right, the name of our sheet is sheet because there's already pivot table 3 there. Make space and try again. Okay, so it's telling us, oh, you can do that, so click OK or escape. Then I have to delete this pivot table. So how do I delete a pivot table? I have a couple of ways to do that. Couple is 2. Okay, yeah, two works. You right click on it and then you click on delete pivot table. Easy peasy, nothing serious. If you like the complex way, highlight everything. Make sure you don't highlight this way and leave this other part out, or you highlight this way, you leave this part out, or you just highlight this. No, highlight completely and you hit the delete button on your keyboard. It gets deleted as well. Now back to rows and columns. When we put any value in rows, they appear in row. And I put them in column, you can see the way it appears across the row, which is individual column. That is the way it works. Okay, so but of course we want to keep it in rows. Now what do we do in what do we put in values for rows and columns? What will go there most times will be qualitative data. That's our text data, text kind of data, or dates, right? That's what will go there most of the time. Majorly rows and column, qualitative data, that's what we have in there. For example, name, the product, the customer ID, the order status, payment method, Those are the kind of things that will go in our row or our column most times, majorly. While for numbers, numerical values, they will be in values. We'll drop them in values. For example, we want to see how much each customer spent so far, right? So we can drop sales in value. Now note something very important, that when you check the boxes, by default, text data, quote and unquote, just for simplicity, qualitative data will always jump into rows by default. For example, if I check this, it jumped into row. If I check this, it jumped into row. It keeps jumping into row. It keeps jumping into row. However, if I check sales, it jumps into where? Into values automatically. Okay, so let's keep that in mind. I'll take this out. I'll take this out. Take this out. Take this out. Okay, so now we have name. Let me just take everything out again. So I'll check this, jumps into row. Check this, it jumps into values. That's what we want. If we don't want that at any point in time, we will do what? We will drag it to where we want it ourselves. Okay, we'll drag it to wherever we want it ourselves. However, this is not looking good. We need our values in decimals, in currency. Okay, so I'd like to format as currency this time. All right, we'll stick to since we have different countries. Okay, we have different countries, so we'll stick to a general or universal base currency. Let's just use the word base currency, and that's USD, English, West number. Okay, currency. Decimals, well, our values, because they are synthetic data, they are rounded up, so take out the decimal as well, keep it on 0 normally. All right, so this is what we have. Now it's not reflecting. I'll refresh. Okay, so it's still not pulling in. I have to do that manually here. Sometimes that happens, so let me try refreshing from here. It's not gonna do it for me. That's fine. Okay, so this is just an example of where to drop numbers and where to drop text. So of course we don't want to see this. We don't want to see the customers and what they spent. We want to see the sales by month. Majorly want to see the sales that happen in January, total amount of sales in January, right? That's still the question. It has not changed. Okay, just explaining what all this field what they do. Now I'll take this out. I'll take this out as well. We might want to know what the filter does, right? We've not talked about the filter, so let's bring in the name and sales again. So say for example, not salesperson, sales, where sales? Okay, so say for example we want to filter by region, right? We just want to see one of the regions. We have regions. Okay, we don't. We have countries, right? That's fine. So we have countries, so I'll do by default. Do not forget, when you check the box, it's easy, right? It's easy to check the box, but most times it doesn't go where we want it. Not most times, once in a while, because naturally we'll probably want country in rows, but this time we want it in filter. So what do? We drag it there ourselves, or directly from here, left click and drag it directly. Okay, so at the top we have country. Now we can click on the drop down and click on, for example, Australia, and then it's okay. So you see it filters our data. So these are our customers from Australia, and this is the amount they spent. The only challenge with this is that this is not user friendly and is not user interactive. That's another word to use. Okay, so probably want one where the end user or the consumer of our reports can toggle, can not necessarily play with the filter, but they can check for a region. Maybe we're sharing across we're sharing to different regional manager or country managers, still regional manager, and we want them to be able to see sales for their country. In reality of it, we might not want them to see the entire data just for their country, but in case just something simple, right? Our focus is pivot table, not the other things about the data itself. Okay, so we will not be able to use this filter right here. Okay, why won't we be able to use it? Apart from the fact that it's not user friendly or user interactive, it cannot control multiple pivot tables. What does that mean? Let me just do something quickly. Let's just bring in another pivot table. Bring in this sales data. Yes, just keep it there. Bring it in. So let's say I will have products. This is the products and sales. Okay, now this filter, if I click on this, change it, it's not affecting this. So you can see that the new one is pulling the data, but this first one we did, except to delete it and bring it in again. So it's not giving us a one, it's not pulling escape, it's not filtering this, data, right? So this is not interactive enough. So what do? We'll see what we can use, which is more interactive and user what's the word, user friendly. Yes, it has the users in mind, the end users in mind. Let's just keep it that way. Okay, so I'll delete this guy, I'll delete this pivot table. Now you know what the filter does. Okay, now you know what the filter does. So I'll just take it out or uncheck, whichever way, it's gone. Now there are some issues that comes with pivot tables, just a few things to mention. But before that, we might probably want to rename this. Okay, instead of just saying row labels, we'll probably want to rename to say customer and then sum of sales. But in this case, we are not using this data. We don't want to see our customers and what they bought and the amounts they spent with us so far, except maybe later we might want to see the top 3, top 5, top something. But for now, we don't want to see any of them. Okay, so how do we do it? What do we do? I'll just completely take out the name, and then we'll bring in transaction dates. Okay, easy. Now we can see the transaction date and the transaction date and the total sales made. Okay, so let me just copy the format in there. All right. Okay, so we have this, and now we can rename this row labels. I'll take it out, so say transaction date. No, take that out. Okay, I'll expand this. All right, now we can rename our pivot table. Okay, but before we do that, let's see what the issues with pivot table are. Not necessarily, I think I should rephrase that. Not necessarily issues with pivot table, mistakes we could make, and sometimes it feels frustrating when we make these mistakes and we don't know how to figure out what went wrong and at what point something went wrong. For example, let's say I'm not using this, for example. Okay, I want to rename my table and I don't like this here, so I just cancel this. Fine, no issues, and I click on this. I go ahead to rename my pivot table, so I say sales by dates. Okay, nice. So now oh, I don't want to use date again, or I want to use amount as well. I want to add quantity. So but then clicking on this pivot table, I'm not seeing my pin on the right again. What do I do? And this happens sometimes where you feel frustrated, like what's happening, what's more going wrong, and you don't seem to figure it. So don't worry, you will not be looking for another YouTube video. All you have to do is right click on it and scroll down, then you see show field list right here, show field list. And once you click on that, boom, it's back. That's just it. It's a peasy. It's back. All right. So now we can say, for example, let's add the total quantity, and then you can see it's the total quantity, but we don't want to see that. It's just an example. I'll take it out. We're good with this transaction. Is that how I spell transaction? It looks weird, but it's okay. Where did our formatting go? Nah, that's not nice. Okay, keep it this way. So we have transaction dates. The last way to bring in a new pivot table, we can easily copy and paste. Easy peasy. However, the issues with copying and pasting is that the names, before we rename it, let me just leave that before we rename it, the field names, these titles here, do not change. Let me show you what I mean. So the next thing we want to bring in is, let's say I want to see the country. Okay, we don't want to see the date anymore. Take out the date. Now you see I've removed the date. If you look at it, transaction date is no longer there. The only thing I have there is country, but the title is still saying transaction date. Oops. So we have to rename again, and then we'll say country. However, if we bring in a new pivot table as well, what we'll have there will be row label, and we'll still have to rename that. Okay, but the most important thing is you do not forget to rename it, because it can end up confusing if you leave the names. Let's say you just forgot about them, and then you have country everywhere, or you have transaction dates everywhere by whatever it is you aggregated with or aggregated on. So that will not be nice. Okay, so it's important you check that and you keep that in mind. Okay, so I want to see the country, and let's say I want to see the sales as well. So this is what we have. Now do not forget that we copied this, we didn't use a new pivot table, so we're still not getting our formatting. Let's just apply it manually. All right, I think we'll bring in a new pivot table now, so we don't get all these formats again. Now we have the country and sales. Can we do more with pivot table than just 2 columns? Oh, very well, very well. For example, I can add product to columns. One thing you should understand is that you will not always build a dashboard. A dashboard is not always needed. Okay, is not always needed. So what do? You can build a good pivot table, notes by the side, well summarized, and that could be enough. That could do for your report. Okay, so let's look at what we're doing. Let's continue. So here we have so we can see that no sales for widget A in Australia, none in Canada, none in UK, but we have in US, nice, none in Australia for widget B, we have in Canada, none for the rest, none for this. Okay, this is detail page, I'm not interested, delete that. Okay, so we have this. So we only made sales for widget C in the UK, and then we made sales for widget D in Australia only. Okay, all right, so that means we didn't sell the rest of this product in, that means okay, let me put it this way, we sold one product in one country. So one country per product. Widget A, USA. Widget B, Canada. Widget C, UK. And widget D, Australia. Simple, easy peasy. So that was all we did. Okay, which is nice. Not as business, but I'm saying we have an should I call it insight? Yes, still an insight. So we know that, oh, you or our manager or the company where we work only sold one product in one certain country. We don't know why. We can ask questions if we want to know. I mean, why not? Okay. Of course, I will not keep this. I'm just showing you that you can do more. You can lay things out as much as you want. So let's take it out. Country, no, I want country. Products, I don't want. Okay. So I don't want products. Now, the issue is, and that's one thing I want to mention. Earlier when we had a pivot table on this side and we're trying to put something in column, it could not do that for us, right? So one thing you should take note of is that whenever you have a pivot table that is expandable and collapsible, it is expandable and collapsible, do not put anything under it. Okay, what do I mean? You see a plus button, that means you can expand it and collapse it. That means I can see sales by week, I can see sales by actual days. So that means this is expandable and collapsible. So what do? I can move this out of the way, highlight everything. Once you see your draggable icon, see this icon, okay, it's not showing the icon itself. You drag it all the way, you can see. So I move it. If that's not convenient, just do Ctrl X to cut, click here, Ctrl V to paste. You've moved it out of the way. Okay, as simple as ABC. You've moved it out of the way. Next thing is to rename our pivot table so we don't forget. So that's country, sales by country. All right, now if we consider this, you can see now we can expand and see individual sales. Okay, so we can see individual sales. I'll just do something quickly. Insert, bring in this sales data, transaction dates, sales good. I'll delete this at the top. Okay, before I delete it, C V, delete, move up. Okay, all right, so I just want to keep the styling out, the format, so that's how to do that. Okay, so we can see, we can see individual transaction made in days, but when this guy was underneath, we could not expand it this way, right? We couldn't expand. So that's something to keep in mind. And do not forget that this is a new pivot table, so I have to rename again. So say sales by date. All right, so we have this two. Okay, battery. Okay, all right, so the next thing for us to do is add more pivot tables. Okay, but I'll be stopping here. What other things are there to mention? Now let's consider details. For example, I want to see the details about these sales, all the rows for these sales. Now if I double click this, it pulls, you see, it's in it. This is not part of our data. Excel brings it in. So it pulls all the record of the January transaction. It pulls everything, and you can see how nice it did that. It says details for sum of sales, the month, transaction date, January, well titled. So you know that what you're staring at are the transactions that happened in January. Okay, by double clicking, and do not forget we saw that earlier, it says for your information you can double click a value to see the details. Let's do that again. See details to see which detailed values make up the summarized total. Okay, so but we don't want to keep that. I'll delete it. Yes, I know it's permanent. All right, so let's just stop here. This is just a basic introduction to pivot table. Of course, we still build more pivot tables. Okay, what else can we build from this? Do not forget that this will be based on the questions that we have. Right, based on the questions that we have. So let's say I want to build another one. I'll copy this, copy, paste, and I can remove everything first so it becomes a new pivot table. See, everywhere is blank. Then we can bring in products, sales, that's not sales, what's sales? Sales. Now this is products, I have to rename that. I'll come here, sales by products. Okay, what else? We have other status. We have quite a number of things to use, but basically you have a hang. Is it a hang or an hang? I think it's whatever it is. So you have a hang of what pivot table can do. Okay, now one important thing that I want to show you. For example, we want to see countries and the number of customers, right? We want to see the countries and the number of customer. Or let's say, for example, we want to see how many customers use a particular payment method. Okay, let's use that. Control C, Control V. Okay, so we have this, and we want to bring in the order status. So let's remove everything first. To remove, we'll bring in order state payment method. My bad, payment method. Okay, so we'll change this to payment method. Then I want to bring in customer ID to count them. Now now you can see that we applied the formatting to this, but that is put on this as well. Why? Of course, we copied this pivot table, so the formatting applies as well. Okay, I'll just do my clear from this place, clear formats. All right, so we have numbers, but here's the major challenge. This customer ID are not meant to be numbers, because now that they are numbers, they are being added up, and we don't want that. Right, if we go back here, we see that they are what? They are right aligned, and for things that are right aligned, that means they are numbers. So how do we correct that? We can either correct it directly from here, that means correct the data type, or change this. So I intentionally used the customer ID. I knew it was number, so it will do the sum for you, and you will learn how to change the aggregation, because all pivot table has been doing for us is grouping and aggregation. When I say grouping and aggregation, think of it this way: you are in a public space with mixed gender, right? And you have to count by gender. You want to see the number of people in there by their gender. Okay, now Immediately you say you want to see by their gender, you are automatically grouping them, or you are intuitively grouping them. Okay, so you're saying, oh, then you probably say male, say female, you count, right? So that's the way it is. All right, and pivot table helps us do this. And if you look at it, we group by month, aggregate by sales, group by country, aggregate by sales. Now we're grouping by payment method, aggregating by number of customers. So what is an aggregation? Aggregation is just a simple total. Just think of it as a total. Okay, grouping, that's obvious when you group or you classify or you categorize. Okay, and aggregation, which is basically total, and it can be sum, it can be count, it can be minimum, maximum, average. Okay, so these are aggregations. So you group by a qualitative data and you aggregate with or by a quantitative data. Okay, that's what pivot table does for us. Easy peasy. If you're familiar with SQL, it's going to make more sense to you. Okay, that's just it. And by default, this is what visualization tools do for us. They aggregate our data by default. That's why we don't get to see giant tables like this, except in a dedicated view, right? For example, in Power BI, in Tableau, there's a dedicated view where you see all of this. So you don't have pivot table, you don't have to summarize yourself. Automatically, the data is aggregated behind the scene for you, right? It does the heavy lifting for you, so you don't have to do it. That being said, let's come back to this. You have payment method, and this is meant to be the number of customers, but unfortunately it is adding up the numbers, it's adding up the figures as 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, and that does not make sense, right? So what do? We double click on this guy. Easiest way. There are good number of ways to do that, but the easiest is this. Double click on this guy, and then you see the list of aggregation you have. See, and you can pick another one and say count, and I'll click OK, and immediately it changes. For example, if I want to see the average sales by product, I'll double click on this and click on average, and now it is what? Now average. This is sum, this is sum, this is average, this is count, right? That's how you change the aggregation. How else do you change the aggregation? You right click, and you say summarize values by, then you see other options here. Okay, you can show them as percentage of something as well. Okay, maybe percentage of, let's say, that's the column total. Now if you're confused about row total and column total, just stick to grand total. Okay, so we have 20% of customers, right? So that makes more sense. Of course, I'll take out the decimal. So we're saying 20% of customers used cash, 30% used credit card, 23% used debit card, and 27% used PayPal, right? So that's another way to look at it. So then we can now rename this to, either you double click, then you rename from here, but easy way is click on it and enter your formula bar, and then you say percentage of customers. So I'll just take this out. It looks good. I don't know, percentage of customers, right? So this is what we have. I was about explaining the other way you can do it. You right click on the value, summarize or show value as, or you come here, right click on this field here. Okay, not getting the option, but you try, you should get the option. Okay, it works. You just right click or you click on this drop down, and you see value field settings. It pops up the same thing. Okay, it pops up the same thing. As I said, the shortest way or fastest way, just double click and then you get that up there. All right, so we have payment method and the percentage of customers. On the basics, I believe you have a good hang of pivot tables now. If you have any question, feel free to ask, in the comment section. Use the comment section effectively. So in case you want to remove all this, you want to change your design, you don't like this color, you see, oh yeah, we have our gray, since that's our color, just stick to that, don't worry, you have yours far. you do that with your file. You don't like the gray, that's fine, absolutely fine, just do what you like. Okay, so we have more options. See, so I don't want every background, all of those things. Or let's say, for example, we don't want the total. You see, say do not show the grand total. You can turn a particular one off. The layout, you see, you have different layouts, feel free to explore them. Blank rows, if you have any blank, you can remove them from there. Okay, row header, banded rows, this funny thing, banded column, so that means if you have another one, it will be white. If you have another one, it will be this color. You see, you get the idea. If we do for banded rows, just like our tables, right, this field, so feel free to explore your design option. Right here is what we have. One major thing I want us to see in the section is our slicer, right? I told you earlier that the filter that we drop in here is not as effective. Okay, so what is the alternative? Okay, running on battery, I think I'm gonna call it a day. All right, see you in the next video.